The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone. I want to welcome you to my webinar today. My name is Linda Janak, and I'll be speaking about the 3 tips to get executives bought into career planning. Please let me know if the volume is okay. You can chat me. Just some quick tips. We will be, as always, providing this webinar as a pre-recorded version, and it will be posted on the website a couple of hours after we end this webinar. And if you have questions, I will definitely answer those, and what I do is just save them till the end. But feel free to send the questions at any point throughout the webinar through the chat box. And let's get started. Okay. Boom. So again, I'm Linda Janak. I am the President and CEO of Talent Guard. We are a full-service talent management software and consulting firm. We probably do about 50-50 in each of those areas. And I'm delighted to be able to speak on this topic. It's one of my favorite topics, and it's, I think, a topic that's being talked about a lot within organizations. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through a real case scenario, but I'm just using fictitious names to hide the innocent. So first, what I'd like you to do is meet Steve. Steve is a great guy. He is a senior director of retail merchandising for a company called Retail Central. So this is going to be a story about a retail chain. So a little bit about the company. They sell home appliances. They're about $100 million in revenue. They're a private company. They have about 2,500 employees, and they've been growing very rapidly on the East Coast. And as you can see from this last line, they plan to open 30 more stores by 2016. So as you can imagine, being in HR, they're going to have a massive recruiting campaign that they're going to have to put forward. But after many years with the company, Steve has decided that he no longer wants to be with Retail Central. And he's just really tired of all the lip service about career planning. So throughout the entire recruiting process, when he was interviewing with employees, potential employees, they basically said everything that he thought was ideal and what he was looking for. But when he actually got inside the company, what he realized was that it was a lot of lip service. And, hearing things like, we will invest in your skills, we really do focus on career planning, we recognize you and we'll make those recognitions public for great work, we care about you, you are valued. All of those things that we love to hear as employees, he heard often, but he didn't really see the management team following through on these sorts of commitments that were made to him. So he was very frustrated about where his career currently is at Retail Central. So he's starting to think, like many employees do, is maybe there's some greener pasture somewhere else. Maybe there's an organization out there who really will see through on these commitments as an organization. So let's just talk a little bit more about Steve. So Steve, by all accounts, is a hypo. So he is a stellar performer in his retail merchandising area. He's doing a terrific job. All of his numbers are up. But why is he a little frustrated? Well, there are 4 reasons. Of all the times that he's put together his own development plan, and in this organization, and I know many organizations, the managers actually take on that action, but in this particular company, it was the employee's responsibility to put together their development plan, share it with their manager, have their manager's input, get buy-in, and then work on it collaboratively together. But that didn't happen in this situation. In addition to that, whenever Steve wanted to sit with his manager to talk about career development and what types of opportunities were there, this was an organization that didn't have a lot of infrastructure around HR, so he didn't even know what all the different roles were unless he was out searching on some other recruiting board or on his own website. So his manager barely talked about career development. He was turned down 4 times for various training opportunities, and these were things that he thought would develop him as a leader and as a manager. And then he only received kudos once. So these 4 bullet points, although HR did a great job communicating and getting people in the door, management wasn't doing a good job following through on what those important tenets were in order to maintain individuals. So what does that mean? Well, from an HR perspective and from a leader perspective, it means he's a flight risk. He is somebody who is thinking about leaving the company. He's expressed his disinterest in staying, and this is somebody who has built up a team, has done phenomenal work, has the potential to do more work. The company is growing. It has to add all these new stores. He could be in line for one of those potential opportunities. They've made a huge investment in him to get him onboarded, to get him to know the products and the customers and all the policies. And you know as HR professionals what that's like, but he's another flight risk. So I'd like to introduce Becky. Becky is an HR business partner over the retail merchandising area. So they have many business partners across the company, but she in particular has Steve within her, I guess, span of control. So Becky was hired on, and she's been with the company several years, but her primary goal was to recruit all of these new people into the organization to help the company continue on its expansion. And she has done a terrific job getting people in the door. And I just want to share with you what her process was for getting people in the door. So what she did, she had to hire 45 executives, and we're talking about senior directors and above, and what she decided to do in that instance was to partner with a recruiting firm that specialized in hiring retail executives. So her goal there was she needed to hire 45 people. And she also brought an applicant tracking system in-house so that they could use an automated tool to be able to help her with job matching. And her whole goal was to reduce the number of applicants applying per job significantly. And what she believed would happen is if she could achieve that metric, she felt that she would be getting higher quality candidates. And in order to do that, she knew she had to have effective job descriptions. So she worked really hard in that area. And through that process, she was able to hire 25 directors and about 56 individual contributors. So in addition to the applicant tracking, what the company had not had before was a formal interview process. So she brought a consultant in to teach people truly how to do functional interviewing, behavioral interviewing, case study interviewing, and how to really share that information, both using the ATS because it provided some of that, and through just informal, getting together, having the debriefings about how we're truly trying to hire toward a role and not just that we really like this person and think that they can do a good job. So really enabling that feedback to be shared. And then an entire onboarding system. So how can she implement an onboarding system that would seamlessly integrate 126 employees by automating all the information that would come out of the ATS so we don't have to start from scratch. So again, she did a wonderful job getting people in that first week on board of getting all the paperwork done and just doing the fundamentals. And in addition to that, she had a 3-month onboarding program which covered, like I said, all aspects, their markets, their products, the divisions of the company. Didn't really have a lot on career planning, but at least structurally, organizationally, people had a good idea about the company that they were working for. And it took about 6 months to go through this entire process and get 126 candidates in-house. Her total program cost in terms of the ATS software and the onboarding software made up a very small percentage of the overall cost because, as you know, recruiting commissions can be exorbitant, but she negotiated some good rates there. She also had to hire 2 new employees to help her with this process because she had a very small HR team. And then if you also take into consideration the amount of time it takes to actually do the interviews, and we thought maybe 5 people per candidate, 1 hour each. You know, we get a very conservative fee there. So you can see there the total cost was about $900,000 to get 126 candidates. So, you know, that might fall within the range of what you're looking at. The problem, though, and you may share in this, is, you know, of all the people that she hired, the executives, the directors, and other, she had a very high turnover rate in 18 months. And this, you know, this is not just within her company. In a lot of the companies that we deal with, we see this. We've made a significant investment financially and in time to bring these people on, only to have them leave. You know, 5 of the executives left within 18 months. That's a huge problem. And the reason cited, because they did have an exit interview, was really around the career planning and the management styles. So Becky's dilemma, right? Because now we're thinking about going forward to think about the growth. She, in just 2013, by the end of this year, she has 4 new retail locations that need to open. This is a massive undertaking. Lots of training, lots of staff, lots of hiring, as you know, a lot of program development. So she needed to hire about 200 people, and she needed to do it fast because the first retail store is opening in 2 months, and she's dealing with all these turnover issues. So she's not very happy. And as she starts to think about this, she realizes that recruiting is only half the solution. Even though she can have a very strong employer campaign, she didn't have a strong campaign internally that is going to support the process on a more ongoing basis. So what she's thinking to herself is an effective career development program is needed to retain and engage these employees. So due to turnover, the turnover that she had, 33 to 38%, and due to budget constraints, she couldn't just come up with a lot more money to bring these people inside the company with these recruiting fees. She had to get creative. So when she spoke with her leadership team, they decided that they would try to focus internally. Inside the company, throughout all of their existing branches, they would start there. But the problem was Becky didn't have a good system that would help her identify talent based on particular skills needed for each of the different roles that would be required in these new branches opening up. So that didn't go so well. So she had a bright idea, and her bright idea was, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start meeting individually one-on-one with each manager to really understand their employees. She wanted to really get to know them, and it was going to be a very time-consuming process, but it's the only thing that she knew that she could do to really start to understand the talent, or the talent pool, or whatever you refer to it as, but that's what she needed to figure out. And specifically, she had 4 key areas that she was trying to understand. Their skills. So the manager question is, what skills do your employees have, right? And by skills, we're talking about competencies. The capabilities. What sorts of experiences have they had prior to Retail Central and during Retail Central? Qualifications. These can be anything from certain training required in like a forklift operator, for example, or certifications. And their preferences, and these are work style preferences. What do they like? What don't they like? For example, do they like overtime? Are they willing to move? Being able to understand those sorts of things. So as you can imagine, she had this massive spreadsheet that at first sight she thought, I'm just going to fill it out and then I'll be able to run some queries on it. Let's talk about a particular example. I'd like you to meet Roger, also known as the retail store manager. So he is a manager within one of the stores, one of the appliance stores, and he's really good at his job. He's been at the company for a while. And Becky started with his manager. Becky asked his manager 4 questions. What are Roger's top 3 skills? What are the experiences that you believe are shaping him and that he needs to experience in order to become a better leader with more responsibility? Do you know any of his qualifications, and what are his styles? And as you can see, Roger here is a little bit blurry because after the conversation, she wasn't getting a whole lot of information. And guess what? It was Roger who? It could have been anybody, any question asked of anyone in it, and Roger was practically invisible. She didn't learn much about Roger, and she looked at his performance reviews. There was no 360 done on him, so she didn't have a lot of information there. When she went to go try to find his resume, it wasn't even in the employee file, so she didn't have a lot to go on. Major problem. So Roger's manager was clueless, as were many others, and that's not to say that we're dinging them. It's just they didn't have the tools nor the support to really understand who their talent is either. So it was a company problem. The company problem is this: if you can't take stock of your talent, how do you expect to develop and retain them? If you're doing a performance review and it's sitting in a drawer, if you're doing a development plan and it's sitting in a drawer, you're never truly going to understand the types of skills, the depth of skill, the breadth of experience that you have in order to grow your company. And this was a massive problem for Retail Central. So what did Becky do? She outlined a plan. Her plan was to do three things: automate the identification of talent, the alignment of talent, and having formal development plans that she could turn to see our people on track. And the two tools, and these are automated tools that she brought in-house, was a career pathing tool. And the career pathing tool is going to enable employees to create talent profiles. Then against those talent profiles, they could compare themselves to different job profiles, and they could start evaluating gaps, a very employee-centric tool. However, we also needed a manager tool, because the manager needed to be able to query and to search on and to look at various different people in the organization who could fit certain roles and or start to create talent pools based on whatever key identifiers that they thought. And Succession is really manager-centric. So the two of them together are required if you're going to do career planning effectively. So tip one was know your talent. And we broke it out into the needs of HR employees and managers. So HR in this area, their needs were they needed to be able to create job profiles. So what does that mean? Well, it means that you, as an organization, you have to have a job family structure. Within that job family structure, we need to have good job descriptions that outline the experiences and the skills and the qualifications. And they need to be consistent, because we're going to be querying off those. Employees need to be able to either have their information imported and or to be able to edit the data, enhance the data, much like a LinkedIn profile. And that managers need to be able to provide input to that profile and approve it to make sure that, yeah, this looks pretty legit. Tip two, align the talent. So HR has to be able to build progression paths. So what you need to know there is feeder roles, what feeds in, what feeds out. And we have to look not only within department, but across the organization. So we're thinking lattice. So just think about that when we think career progression. That employees need to be able to build out many different scenarios. So if I'm a retail manager and I want to become a branch manager, what does that look like? If I'm a retail manager and I want to become a category manager, what does that look like? If I want to get into IT, what does that path look like? And to be able to see timelines and skill gaps based on each of those. And that managers need to be able to search that data and then create their own queries to be able to search on different things based on skills. And then tip three, to develop talent. So HR needs to provide learning resources, and that doesn't mean buying a catalog and having tons of different courses in that catalog. They have to be relevant to the career, to the skill, and usable today. And that doesn't mean that you have to pay a lot for that. There's amazing things on for free that you can tie to certain competencies. Employees need to see the gaps based on their role interests, not just up the ladder, and they need to be able to create an IDP. And managers need to be able to manage those IDPs, have those very fruitful, good feedback, good management discussions based on where the organization needs to go. So let's break these down a little bit more into our story. So building the foundation, as we said, creating standardized job profiles using an industry-leading framework. So when you think about the job role, right, you're going to think about many things, but the things that are mandatory, for example, you need to know what the job description is. That's your basic paragraph. The business area, the job family, the job grade, pay scale, time to proficiency. What that really means is how long does it typically take someone to become proficient in the role? Is it, you can do it in months, it can be 12 months, 24 months, and this data typically is based on industry standards and or what HR knows about their internal talent. And then what are all the feeder roles, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. In addition to that basic stuff, as we said before, skills are core competencies, capabilities are key activities that happen within a particular role, qualifications are essential or desired, and we said it could be training or certifications, and then the work style preferences. So we have to be able to complete each of these areas in order to have an effective job role that we can then compare people to. Usually it's owned by HR, this particular process, but it's manager supported because they're helping to build up what are the requirements of each role. So it's a joint collaborative effort. But then we have to enable employees to create those talent profiles. Again, it has to be around an industry-leading career framework. So what kind of information do we need on the employee? Well, a lot of this can be imported from your HRIS, but we have to know a lot about the employee. What is their current role? What is their current job title? When did they get started, right? Because we're going to be looking at progression timelines. What job family or department do they belong to? And again, this information can be either entered by HR, it can be entered by the employee, or it can be imported. In addition to that, we want to have their full-up resume in the system. We want to be able to search on every single keyword in their resume, in their in that first bucket here where we have that contact information, or on any of the 4 quadrants. So cutting and pasting, again, or importing, you can get that information in here, but rarely when I've asked a manager, well, tell me where such and such, where was Roger before he came here? Oh, I don't know. Let me think about that. I'm not really sure. Well, what did he do? Was he in a store manager role, or did he do something different? I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look. Well, guess what? Now it's at our fingertips, so there's no excuse with any manager. If you ask them about their talent, they should be able to answer it. And again, you need to have the 4 areas: skills, capabilities, qualifications, and preferences, because we need to align the talent. So if you have an excellent talent profile, that's standardized. If you have a great job profile that is standardized, I'm able to query on every single component within those profiles to come up with the kind of talent and the kind of career planning that will be required. And some of the things that enable us to, what that enables is for us to build true career paths that represent the here and now, allow us to see the possibilities in the future, and to know exactly where I'm at so that I know what my expectations are. My manager knows what those expectations are. And now we actually have something that's concrete to dialogue on. And within that, I know what % match fit I am. I know how long it's going to take me to grow into that role. And I know exactly what development options are available to close the skill gap. Let's look at that a little bit more. So, as I said, the feeder roles are very, very important. If you have something that looks like this, you're in a very good position. So what that means is if the role is Senior Business Development Manager, what roles feed in? And you can see there are many: Development Manager, Marketing Manager, Channel, and Sales. Now, a rule of thumb around thinking about feeder roles, how we do it at Talent Guard is we say if there is a 70% plus overlap in the types of skills, capabilities, qualifications, and preferences required for the role, it can serve as a feeder role, right? So there's a lot of comparative work that happens to figure out what your feeder roles are. And the same for the next role. If there's a 70% overlap, it's going to be considered a next role, so that we can have true-up career paths that span across many different departments. And this is just an example of the kind of information that's needed in order to automate a system. So that's building the career progression paths. That's what that process is doing right there. Once you have that and you load it into the system, what you can begin to do is now enable that career pathing, that career planning process to begin. So what you're seeing in this particular picture, and they're just static pictures, is if I'm starting here in the middle is your current role. What that will do is, based on those feeder roles in and out, depending on where we are, it's going to show you within this bubble chart format what your most likely next roles could be. And there are many ways that you can build this. I'm just showing you, I actually built this map. So what you can see here in this picture is the 4 roles around it. You can see what % match you are. And then if you are actually in the software, you could click on these and see the details of each role, and then you could add it to your path. Now, if I selected IT Product Manager, that would then become the blue, and the Network Manager would build down here. So what we're trying to do in this process, and where we did a lot of focus groups around career planning with organizations, and their fear in doing it was that everybody would want to move up. And although that does happen, if you can build a scenario like this where it's a bubble chart, where it's more of a lattice, what you start to see is people select roles based on interest and not just because it's an upward path. So what you see, this flat line, is it's building it in a flat way, but when I save it and produce it, it will show what the trajectory is. But we're trying not to make that the #1 goal of career pathing. So once I say, oh, really, I love this career path, it's got a few moves, then I can see, oh, here's the path, here's how long it will take, here are the number of skills that I would have to add on and capabilities to go from one role to the next, and then from this role to this role. And then with each of these, I can then pop them open and start to see all of the specific skills that I would need to develop and all the specific development options that go along with it. And then I can say, I want to accept this and add it to my development plan. So now we start enabling employees to see possibilities, which that is what career planning is all about. Planning for something that's not yet happened and having the tools to do it. Doesn't guarantee you'll get there, but at least you can have dialogue. So that's kind of that employee-centric part. Now, what about the managers? Well, guess what? The managers are able to see all of the employees' career paths, what interests them, but at the same time, managers can start to make notes of, I think Roger would be good for this role. Roger may not even have thought that, and then we can see the comparisons across. Or, for example, if I want to go in, and I'm a manager, and I say, I want to find somebody at grade level X, these are what are called search criteria, who may be in this job family, this keyword, I want to find somebody who speaks Spanish or Latin or some other thing, because I may be opening something overseas or in an area that has a heavy language requirement. And then I might want to click on skills, and I say under skills, within your competency framework, you might say I need somebody who knows how to manage, who at a basic level, I need somebody who knows how to run a cash register at an advanced level, things of that nature. You get to define the profile, and then when you hit search, it will come up with everybody within your company who fits that profile. So you can see here, best fits are going to be fully green, partially fit, not really a good fit, but hit some of them. So then I can go and I can look at each one of their profiles, and if I like them, then I click, 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 and I make a talent pool. It's that easy. And then that talent pool can then be managed formally by HR and by the management team, and we can really see, depending on what talent grid you use, are we, low potential, low performance, high potential, high performance, and you can look at that based on each one of these particular talent pools. And you can see here we have area sales manager, branch manager for California, and each one of these has a different set of requirements. So being able to build that enables managers to start truly managing talent. And this is what we're supposed to do as managers. As a manager, 80% of our job should be managing talent and not doing our own work. So we have to teach them that. So remember Roger, with the use of automation tools, Roger and his manager had a much clearer picture of his specific skills, of his future career aspirations, and what they could do about it. So what it looked like for Roger, if we kind of look at it in that same scenario, is he's at retail store manager. Well, what if he wanted to move up to senior or retail director or merchandising manager out of store management altogether. Well, each one of those presents a different plan for him, and he can save them all. And he can do all the development options if he wants. But now we know some of his interests. So as I'm talking to my executive team, I can say, you know, Roger has indicated he's interested in this role, and I had no idea. Maybe we should look at him for development. So what was the outcome? Well, let's talk back to Becky again. Again, she needs 4 store managers. Well, because she had the tools and she got the data in there and the employees were using it, she found that she had 15 internal employees that actually fit her ideal store manager profile. And because we set up all the criteria, she had 1 who could do it right now without any training whatsoever. She knew 2 of those employees would be ready in 3 months, 9 and 6 months, and 3 and 9 months. So she had that horizon window. Well, she needed several ready now, right? So what does that mean, though? It means that Becky now has information on what these employees need to do in order to become ready. So I can make a lot of decisions with this data. I can say, well, if I have 2 ready in 3 months, what happens if I accelerate their development plan? What happens if I bring in a coach to accelerate their development? Can I get it to 2 months? Can I get it to 1 month? Can I do job shadowing? We have data, and we have specific data about what is required to fill the gap. You can't get any better than that, because now I can develop my data. So we have, again, in this picture, what does that mean? We have 2 that need to be ready, and we have a 3rd that we're just not really sure about. But now I have a custom development plan that I am now using or accelerating to get them ready for opening day. So what does a development plan look like? Well, if we take an example of here's a beautiful smile. She was the one who was ready now. Well, we can see based on her career plan or her IDP, this becomes the IDP, we know that these are 4 things that she needs to do. Now I can see where is she at in terms of progress, when is the start and end date, has my manager been contributing to it, and then I can update and we can solicit feedback across the entire company on, hi, how am I doing on this goal, what do you think I could do to close the gap, and it becomes very social with lots of tracking and interaction and engagement. Because now as a manager, if I'm on the plane and I plug in my iPad, or if I'm on my iPhone, or if I'm sitting here at the computer, I can contribute to this plan without having a formal face-to-face, and I can do it always. So let's take a breath for a moment, and let's think about Becky implementing this plan, running fast to get these retail operations filled. We are starting to see some changes. We're no longer going to see the 45% or the 33% turnover rates. But why are people staying? Well, guess what? People had words that they could put to values. They did see the company investing in their skills through the introduction of tools like this. The company became duly interested in focusing on career planning because now they had a reason. It wasn't about just recruiting. It was recruit when we need to, but let's truly look at the talent we have. Let's understand it and let's grow it. Lots of recognitions through the system because of the feedback button where you could come and give kudos to people. Kudos make people feel really good, and it extended beyond just the employee and the manager. Even customers could give kudos. That they felt cared about. Why did they feel cared about? Because people are talking about the employees. You're talking about me. You're talking about something that I want to do. And I'm valued. Because we're having conversations, you're demonstrating to me that I have something to give. And by the way, remember Steve? Well, Steve realized after looking around, thinking there were greener pastures, that Retail Central really has the greenest pasture. And they actually used Steve. Becky relied on Steve quite a bit through this whole process to help her with some of these initiatives. So he became part of that task force, actually a major part of the task force, and helping her to adopt it and roll it out and sell the value. Because as you know, when you do something like this, it's a culture change. It requires change management. It introduces new tools, which requires a tremendous communication campaign, but it can be well thought out. And in this case, in Retail Central, they just started with one group, and then it just grew virally across the organization. And before we knew it, we had all the job roles in there, which is a very smart thing to do. So with the right recruitment and the right career planning program tied together, hand in hand, you will attract and retain the right talent. And that concludes the presentation part. Just a couple of things. We have 5 strategies to managing an effective performance review program on May 1st at 12 Central, and it's in very much the same format where we're going to continue the dialogue with Retail Central for this one. And, of course, if you want to schedule a demo to see any of the tools, some of those were screenshots of Talent Guard's product suite, which has 6 modules, and I'll just lightly touch on these. Our performance module is our ongoing, continuous, very social, collaborative performance management tool. Our succession tool, which, as I told you, is manager-centric. Our development tool, which is your online IDP. You saw a snapshot of that. LearnTrack is where you track high certification, mandatory compliance, things like that. Career pathing is the bubble chart and allows employees, very employee-centric, to build out lots of progression paths. And then 360 is your 360 multi-rater feedback tool. They work in concert, as a suite or one module at a time. So with that, what I'd like to do is open the floor for any questions that you may have about any of the slides that you saw here today. Yes, Jackie, we will have a copy of these slides available so that you can download both in the slide format and also in the recorded version. Great. Well, if there are no other questions, I hope you enjoyed this webinar format. I'm open to any feedback that you have on, whether the content needs to be more detailed, less detailed, as you know, because I like to make these as useful as I can for you. And I got one question here. In regards to executive buy-in, are you suggesting the automation makes it easier for them to be involved? By executive buy-in, it involves a lot of things, right? It involves having automation to have the resources that are needed for managers and employees to do their job, but it also means that executives and managers need to support the process. So with the information, we have to then use that information in the career planning process, support the process, endorse the process, and participate in the planning and using the tools, and not saying, well, that's just for them down below. So it has to be cohesive. We have to have buy-in from the top, and we have to have usability and adoption. And that creates that buy-in all the way around in the company. And that truly makes Retail Central an employer of choice. And it's a huge competitive advantage being able to use these tools and introduce them in the onboarding process, which is where Retail Central introduces the talent profile part. Any other questions? No? Well, I appreciate everyone staying on the call. We had such a great and large audience. I'm just blessed to have people who are wanting to learn more about all kinds of talent management initiatives and get some key tips. As ever, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me, linda.janak@talentguard.com. Or, if you're interested, I invite you to look at our website to learn more. So thank you so much, and we will send out an email shortly letting you know when the recorded version is available.